Welcome to the second of two special editions of ABNcast, brought to you this week from Aerospace Tech Week in Munich, Germany. My name is Lee Hayhurst, Editorial Director of Aviation Business News, and in this edition of ABNcast, I'll be talking to IFS, Aerospace Accelerated, and JetBlue Ventures about technology and innovation in the aviation sector. Okay, so for our next interview on today's special ABNcast from Aerospace Tech Week, I'm joined by Jacqueline Davidson. Jacqueline is the Program Director at Aerospace Accelerated. It's difficult to say because it's not the proper spelling. But that is actually a Boeing company, but you don't have Boeing in the name, as you mentioned a moment ago on stage. Welcome, Jacqueline. Thanks for joining us. Just explain a little bit about what Aerospace Accelerated is, and what it does, and how it plays with Boeing.
Yes, so thanks for having me, for starters. Yes, so I am the program director of Aerospace Accelerated and also the investment principal for Boeing. So lucky for me, I get the two jobs for the price of one.
Two wages?
No,
Okay.
Fortunately not. But I can give you my boss's number if you'd like. No, so Aerospace Accelerated was formed about 4 years ago, and it is the innovation center for lots of different companies that we work with externally. We're really focused on how do we bring the future of aerospace here now. And that's a really lofty goal, but what that means in practice for what we do is we run a series of innovation programs, accelerator programs, investment programs. We work with different partners all around the globe. We work with the likes of GKN Aerospace, which is a big tier 1 supplier to Boeing. We've worked with Etihad Airways, we've worked with Emirates, we've worked with Tawaz and Council, who's the offset obligator and defense offset authority in the UAE. We've worked with the ATI, Aerospace Technology Institute in the UK, you name it. We bring together all of these different diverse stakeholders who are really keen on progressing the aerospace industry forward using innovators like startups, like entrepreneurial-minded individuals, to help us ultimately. And I think it requires a lot of different minds to come together to make that a reality, because as we know, Boeing is around 160,000 person business. So to get that corporate to move, or to get any of these corporates to move, it requires all of us to come together in order to do so. So at Aerospace Accelerated, we've run accelerated programs, hackathons, just solely done investment off of Boeing balance sheet. And the purpose for that is to help these startups get a foothold in aerospace.
Located just behind us where we are recording this now, there's a startup zone. I think it's an innovation for this year at this show. I don't know how many there are, but I know you've got around 8 startups that you are working with. Just tell us a little bit about why it's important for them to be physically here this week, and what they get out of it, and obviously what you get out of it supporting them.
Yeah, so I have around 8 of my companies are here, just to put it in perspective, because I know we can't really see it, but there's 3 rows of startups, I would say 10 per row, so let's just say it's 40. 8 out of 40 of our companies, that's quite a lot, so I'm really proud of that. Our whole portfolio, we have 42 companies in total across 14 different countries and across 12 different domains, so we invest quite broadly. Those companies are anywhere from seed to pre-Series A. The companies that we've supported have been 10-plus-year-old startups all the way through to an idea that was just formed 3 weeks ago and the business was just formed. So it depends on what the type of technology is and where we invest, but I would say in the near term, the way that our program has evolved is we've been looking for technologies that solve pain points now. That's not to say that the companies that are here physically are ones that are not working on cool futuristic tech, but they realize to get a foothold in aerospace, you need to adapt the technology in a way that's, something that can be used currently today, because we need innovation yesterday. So, go ahead.
And you said you limit the number of companies you work with just because there needs to be a focus. Rather than trying to be too broad or to do too much in some ways, you want to focus on a certain number of companies. So, what was it? You work with 8 at any given time? Or?
We work with 10 per year.
10 per year.
Yeah, so we say our limit is 10 to 12, but what I've found personally is that 10 per year is kind of our max, because when you talk about doing one POC, It requires the integration of IT because, of course, you have to get access to data. It requires, export compliances. It requires program managers. To get the whole business to move, to even do a small POC, to make it meaningful, is a lot of work. And so it's too much pull on the business to be able to do more than 10 per year. So some of the companies that are here today, one of them is called Nabla Mobility. They're from Japan, actually, and they flew all the way here to Munich to be here for this conference. I think the reason for that is because conferences like this one give them the opportunity to learn and engage with different stakeholders all across the industry. So at this conference, you have the likes of operators, MROs, you have the OEMs too, the likes of Boeing and Airbus. It's really valuable and beneficial for them to be able to actually connect in person, hear and read what the pain points are, especially if you're talking about different cultures of how do you understand when one person says one thing, what are they actually meaning? You can read different body languages. For Nabla Mobility, the company is really interesting. So they're brilliant MIT grads, previous BCG consultants, very well connected. They are working on flight optimization. So what that ultimately means is they're using their AI modeling tool to help optimize the flight path. And what we heard earlier from my panel with the head of the Civil Aviation Authority, Stuart, was that we cannot, our airspace is fully utilized. We can't deviate from the flight path, right? So what does that mean for likes of companies like Nabla when they're trying to solve a pain point for airlines and they want an optimized solution? What that means is they need to go back to the basics. So, they're not necessarily taking their eye off the ball for futuristic type of technologies, but they're working in what currently exists today. So what that means is they've been working on a POC for Peach Aviation, which is a sub of ANA Airways. And so they have actually taken existing flight paths that is currently used by the pilot. So they're not deviating in any way, shape, or form, but they're using turbulence data to turn that into a fuel saving. And what they've found is around 5% of fuel on average is saved on the flights that they use the software and the data. Yeah. In the future, where they'd like to be is optimizing the overall flight path. Unfortunately, we're not there yet, but that's just one example of, okay, just because we're not there yet doesn't mean you can't currently take what exists and make it even better.
Yeah. Well, one of the themes that came out of the panel you mentioned is this idea that really innovation is about incremental steps. Yes, there's an endpoint you think you want to get to, but really that's almost not the important thing. It's the steps that you're going to take to get there, because you've got to bring people with you, not least the regulators. You mentioned the CAA were speaking, but there's the FAA, there's EASA, so there's loads of people you've got to bring into it. The ecosystem's huge in aviation, lots of people involved. What does the accelerator, what does Aerospace Accelerator do to help them, I guess, manage their expectations? Because young entrepreneurs are very idealistic. They know where they want to be. I guess sometimes hard to make them compromise and be pragmatic because they've got a very clear vision. Do you find that? Do you find you have to bring a bit of reality to it, but give them this sense that they can get there in the end?
I found that the companies that we've worked with, and maybe I've just been lucky, they're not as rigid as you would think when you think of a typical startup, and maybe that's because we go through a really rigorous down selection process. I work with my engineers to say, okay, of course, does this technology defy the laws of physics? Is it even remotely possible? But from there, it comes down to really a business decision, and at Aerospace Accelerated, we believe that it's people that scale businesses. Technology is important, but people and the person who we're backing is more important than anything else. So what I've found is that it's not as challenging for the startup side. There is, of course, an education piece of, hey, we're a 160,000 person business. You think you can do this in 2 months, but we can't do this in 2 months. So there's that educational piece, of course, but the harder part that I've found is the corporates keeping at pace with the startups while not effectively killing them. What we've done is we've actually done two different things. At Aerospace Accelerated, we have implemented a corporate program. It's called our corporate mentorship program, our corporate educational program. And with that program, we put all of the corporates, mentors that we work with through the program. Otherwise, we don't let them work with our startups, because a startup's time is their most valuable resource. And so at Aerospace Accelerated, if I can understand their pitch and if I can do the first level going around pitching to internal stakeholders for that startup, find where the opportunity might be and then bring them in, that saves heaps of time rather than just sending them on an internal roadshow that might lead to nowhere. So I think that's one thing that we've done is we've almost taken the reverse approach of educating ourselves on how we work with these startups, because we work 9 to 5s and they don't. They work 24/7 and they have many different hats that they wear.
Just a final thought before we have to wrap up. How do you feel the aviation sector is perceived by entrepreneurs, by this new breed of young whippersnappers who want to come in and change the world? Do they see it as being an area that they can get into? There was talk earlier on the stage about how the ecosystems, we have to collaborate. You said if you find something that's not for Boeing, you will pass it on to a competitor. This is not a sort of deeply competitive area. We need to collaborate. So does the aviation industry do enough, do you think, to portray itself outwardly as a welcome place for innovators?
In short, no. I think we can always be doing more. I also don't think it's a welcome place for innovators, but also in particular female founders. I think there's a lot more that we can do to make sure that it's an open space that's welcome for everyone so they can understand. In aerospace, it's really, really big from the outside, but in reality, once you get into it, it's very small. So a lot of the same people are attending the same events, they're engaging with the same folks. Odds are you'll run into the same individuals 10 years later because someone moved on into a different position. So who we know in aerospace is extremely important. You're right, I did say that at Aerospace Accelerated for big topic items, such as things that we believe that are bigger than ourselves. I mean, Aerospace Accelerated, Boeing's not in the name, even though Boeing signs my paycheck, I work for these startups. Yeah. And so if it's something like sustainability or if it's something like airspace management that can really progress the aerospace industry forward and make a big difference, if I can't work with this startup and if I can't give them the much needed revenue or trial for that POC for the tech that they need, I'll be the first one to call up Airbus, first one to call up anyone to try to make that a success, because I owe it to that startup and I owe it to the industry to see it forward. We don't own any of it ourselves. We need to all come together to try to see it be a success, because if not, we're going to still be talking about urban air mobility 10 years from now. We won't be seeing it become a reality. So I think we owe it to these startups to really come together and figure out how we can partner with one another more effectively, and we also owe it to ourselves to be able to mentor these startups and mentor these female-founded startups in particular to make sure that they know that this is a welcome space for them as well. Yeah, great point, particularly about the female-founded startups. I think the stats on getting hold of finance in female startups just generally globally is astonishing. You can't do it. There's a great point, mate, and I think also these startups are quite fragile. They need to be handheld through it, because they do go bust quite often. But if they've got something, you want to keep them in business. So Jacqueline, look, thanks for joining us. That was really fascinating. A great session earlier, and good luck with the future. We'll hopefully catch up with you soon on some of the successes that you bring to the industry. Thank you. I hope so. Thank you. So joining me today on the second day of Aerospace Tech Week is Rob Mather from IFS. He is the VP of Aerospace and Defence Industries for IFS. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks very much, Lee. Really nice to join you.
So yesterday you spoke on stage. Well, first, before we do that, let's talk about IFS a minute. So what do you do there? What's your role there? And what is IFS all about? What do you do as a company?
Sure. So IFS is an enterprise software company. So we have a full back-end ERP suite, but why we're here at this show is we're a pretty big company, but we compete with the biggest of the big in terms of software companies, and the way that we do that is by specializing. So we specialize in 6 industries. Either our first or second industry every year is aerospace and defense, which is where I come in. And what we do in order to compete is provide focused solutions. So we're the only software provider that is both an enterprise software platform, but also competes as a best of breed in terms of MRO IT.
And so you've got a stand here, you spoke. How have you found the show this week? I've been in as many sessions as I could. There's a lot of talk about technology, obviously, but AI in particular. What do you think the key themes have been this week so far?
Well, I'm the chair of the MRO IT stream here this week, and yesterday, both themes of the day focused around AI. So, largely the morning was around AI and technology, and the afternoon was around AI and people. So, there's obviously a lot of talk of AI. That's the topic of the day globally, really. But there's also been a lot of talk around innovation and incorporating innovation into the ecosystem, particularly when we've got sort of major shifts in the industry like advanced air mobility and new realms in space and all kinds of other things going on.
Yeah. We've just come out of a session on innovation, and again, AI came up. You'd expect it to. A point was made there is about mindset with AI, in that although we're talking about AI as it applies to a very specific niche professional industry, because of what's going on in the public space with AI, where it's gone crazy in the last couple of years, all these applications, the chat GPTs have come out, there's a perception that the real application is it's going to help me write my essays better, or something a bit frivolous like that, whereas actually, there's actually really serious applications, particularly in the aerospace sector, and in some ways you've got to bring people along with you. So you've got to get them to understand that this isn't just a kind of the latest frivolous tech theme or tech, overhyped tech development. There's something more fundamental. I'm sure you'd agree with that, but how do we get that mindset into people?
I would agree with that. It's interesting. In my role, I'm largely responsible for thought leadership, but more often than not, I'm speaking to an industry audience as opposed to the public in general. And so that topic in the innovation panel was really interesting for the considerations that for example, the regulators were talking about noise and the impact on the citizenry and how the citizenry can put up barriers. And it's similar in the vein of what we're talking about with AI, how the public perception of that is impacted. But what's interesting is, although AI jumped into the public zeitgeist in the fall of 2022 when ChatGPT was first released, and within a couple of months that was all everybody could talk about, and that sort of generative AI approach is what is causing people to cheat on their essays and try to submit work that is not their own. What it is, it's a bit deceptive, because in reality, the concepts for AI were laid by Alan Turing in 1950, and the phrase itself, artificial intelligence, was coined in 1956. And you think about a lot of major developments occurred in the 70s and 80s along the line of artificial intelligence. Now, so there have been some obviously major leap forwards recently, but one of the key themes is that data is the food on which AI grows, right? You don't have significant impacts of AI without large amounts of data. And what has really changed recently is the amount of data that can be made available to AI, either through the sort of collective record of humanity that is the internet, or in our case, when you start thinking about the amount of data coming off of connected aircraft, right? That game change in terms of the data that was available to feed the AI is really what's driving the further capabilities of AI today. And their generative AI and what we talk about with ChatGPT is just a small fraction of what you can actually achieve with AI.
So what is this going to do for the sector in which we're most interested in the aviation sector, particularly with MRO? We're going to talk about, I know, about predictive maintenance as well. So what do you see as being the future of AI in this sector? How will it change things? And is it inevitable now that it's coming and you have to just find a way to use it and adapt to it?
Yeah, largely AI is already here. If you're not already utilizing AI, you're already behind, and it's not going anywhere. As a software company, IFS likes to say that we're all in on AI. We've invested heavily, both internally in terms of developing AI solutions for our customers, and embedding AI in our platform, but also in terms of acquiring AI startups to be part of our ecosystem, integrating them into our platform. And in terms of what it means for aviation, in reality, the industry is ripe for with AI use cases. When we poll our customers about what the number one challenge that they face today is, it has come back the last 3 years with one minor blip as the lack of skilled workforce, particularly when it comes to technicians, right? So one of the easiest things for AI to be applied to initially is making your workforce more efficient, right? By being a support tool to help them do their work more easily and more quickly, you can make one technician the equivalent of, or you can do more with fewer technicians, really, is what we're saying. The other side, the number two issue that people are, from our industry, our customers have reported, and the blip that I mentioned earlier, where it briefly became number one, is supply chain disruption. And so another thing that AI is excellent at is optimization. And there's lots of scenarios that are ripe for optimization inside of the aviation maintenance domain. In particular, in this case, we could talk about supply chain optimization, right? So material pre-positioning if you're the consumer of the materials in the maintenance space, but even as a manufacturer, optimizing your supply chain and your output to be able to increase your output to feed the supply chain. And then on the other side of that optimization angle is really the maintenance scheduling side. So we've already, in the industry, done a lot of automation in this space to be able to stretch how far an individual planner can go in terms of the number of aircraft that they're looking after or the number of work packages that they're scheduling. With optimization, that can go even further, and no longer, you're not just trying to make a plan that fits, you're trying to make the best plan.
Yeah, that point about people is been made again and again. Is a very, very important one, and actually in the session we just came out of, I thought an excellent point was made where a lot of what's done around the aircraft is optimized for a very small number of people who actually engage with it, the pilots, the crew, the passengers. But then you've got all this ecosystem of people, from the cargo handlers, from the baggage handlers, the caterers, the cleaners, and they're never asked how can technology and maybe AI help you in your work. And maybe it's time to do that, because all they're going to do otherwise is fear that AI is coming along to take their jobs. Whereas actually, if you use AI to optimize what they do, you get over the problem of lack of people, lack of skills, which is we know that's a crucial problem, particularly in engineering. And so that's how you go back to where we started. That's how you sell AI into the industry and say, this isn't a threat.
And it's really interesting because AI is really good at some things, and it's really bad at other things, or it's really hard to make AI good at those other things. Mm-hmm. So, and there's an interesting corollary where things that might be difficult for a human being to do can actually be easily done by AI, and things that are really simple for a human being to do are some of the hardest things to be able to achieve with AI. Yeah. And being able to have AI interact with 3D physical space is one of the most challenging scenarios, right? Because there's so many variables all the time. The best use cases for that are constrained in sort of a 2D problem, like your autonomous vehicles or little carts that, like the robots in the Amazon warehouse. Yeah. But when you're dealing with all kinds of crazy variables, like in an environment around an aircraft in the line, it's almost impossible, at least at this stage, to have AI replace people in that scenario. So just to your point, the people in that scenario that are interacting with the aircraft, the ground handling crews, the catering, the maintenance technicians, they're not going away anytime soon. And in fact, to your point, like a lot of those people are stressed right now because there aren't enough people doing their jobs, so they're being asked to do more. And in the near term, AI has the potential to help them achieve more rapidly, which means that they're doing the work of more without any additional effort, which means their stress level actually goes down.
Yeah. Look, time is beating us. AI can't give us time, unfortunately, yet. But we've only got a few minutes to talk about this today. But this is a topic we'll talk about again and again, I'm sure. And I'm sure we'll talk to IFS and yourself in the future. I know it's something we'll pick up on at our Predictive Aircraft Maintenance Conference, which is taking place in Dublin in November, because it's so crucial to that area. So, but for time being, Rob, thanks for joining us today and being on ABN Cast. Pleasure to meet you this week, and we'll see you again soon.
Well, thanks very much. It was my pleasure.
Okay, so for this final interview on day 2 of Aerospace Tech Week, I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Snyder. Stephen is the MD of Jetblue Ventures. He'll tell us what that is in a minute. He's also just come off stage from a panel talking about innovation in the aerospace industry. So welcome, Stephen. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me, Lee.
Let's just start with that. Let's talk about Jetblue Ventures, what you do, why what you do is important to the industry.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me on, Lee. I'm Stephen Snyder, Managing Director for Operations and Partnerships at Jetblue Ventures. We are the wholly owned venture capital subsidiary of JetBlue. We've existed for a little over 8 years, during which time we've made 54 investments, or investments into 54 companies, I should say, really spanning everything from consumer-facing technology to back-of-house technology. Alternative aircraft that are going to be powering the future of sustainable aviation. Additionally, revenue management technology that uses AI and ML to tell you what prices you should be charging for flights. It's been so much fun doing this work. JetBlue has always been an innovative airline. For those less familiar, JetBlue is the number 6 carrier in the US, but has always pushed the envelope when it comes to innovation. We were the first airline with TVs on the backs of all of our seats, with fully leather seats, amazing cabin interiors, wonderful business class products that we are now flying to London, as well as several other destinations in Europe as well. So we've always been pushing the envelope and upping the game of innovation. We must be deliberate about it. We are not going to grow our way to superiority through new routes and discounted fares alone. We have to be complementing that with the latest and greatest technology, and that's what my team is here to do.
Yeah. So those 54 investments over 8 years, you come in at about the sort of seed round level for those businesses. So they're startups, but probably scale-ups. Is that right? Were you looking for companies at that level?
It could be seed. I would say Series A is maybe our sweet spot. Ideally, if it is a revenue-generating product or something that has found product-market fit, it's good that you actually have a product that is in the hands of customers. Customers are enthusiastic about it. And then exactly to your point, we want to figure out how can we help grow you, whether it is with JetBlue, with other industry friends that we have, and take you to the next stage of success.
Yeah. And what's the hit rate here? You've got 54 investments. Are all those deemed to have been successful? I mean, you have to accept the fact that not everybody's going to make it, especially in early stage companies. So how's it gone in that sense?
Yeah, venture capital, we like to use baseball analogies in the US of home runs and strikeouts. Maybe these are boundaries and wickets, applying it to the UK.
Possibly, yeah. How many sixes have you scored in that
Absolutely.
case?
Well, we go very big for them. So Joby is probably our biggest, most prominent success story. Now publicly listed, an eVTOL company that we were early investors in. Before a lot of folks knew who they were within the aviation industry, they're a very household name now of electric vertical takeoff and landing helicopters that are going to be in market in a year or two. So that's been very exciting for us as an investor. There are others that are getting very close to public markets, but have become household names within the industry. So it's been really fun watching that happen. Of course, it's always difficult when a startup does not pan out, but we hope that each of those can be a lesson that has advanced the thinking within the industry and really helped us to understand what the barriers are so we can improve upon that.
One of the themes that you spoke about on the panel earlier is the idea of helping these startups to survive. Just practically, there was a talk of payment schedules, for instance. Sure. So a 60, 90-day payment schedule may not be appropriate because these companies are living off pretty skinny cash flows, and they need that to survive. So anything you can do really, it's about nurturing, isn't it? These these companies to get through that difficult period in their life, because they may go on to do big things.
And meanwhile, on the other side of the coin, the airlines or other aerospace companies that are supporting these startups, they have very thin margins and very difficult working capital requirements as well. So sometimes you have to get creative, and it doesn't have to be an either or cash type thing. Let's think about other things that are quite valuable to startups, having that logo on the pitch deck, exchanging equity, finding different ways that we can think creatively about how startups are compensated. Meanwhile, how startups are fairly compensated too, because I love that point. I can't ask them to wait 6 months when they might not be there in 6 months.
Yeah. What do you think, looking at the aviation sector, taking a sort of step back, where do you think innovation and technology has the potential to have the biggest impact? I think obviously sustainability is always mentioned in this area, but there's other areas too, maybe often areas that are not quite so customer facing, a lot of back office stuff. So where do you think the biggest impact's going to come?
Sure, I think artificial intelligence has so much promise. I know now is the time that the public has become more skeptical of artificial intelligence, but I try to tell folks that are operators, we are not here providing artificial intelligence to airlines to write dissertations, to write essays for grade schoolers. We're really trying to think about how do we use it in operational contexts, how do we use it to improve productivity, and how do we think differently about what artificial intelligence is in the first place. One of our portfolio companies called Asaya is doing these really wonderful deployments using computer vision in the field, where they can be targeted to say, hey, this is what's happening on the ramp in real time. This is when the fuel truck arrived. This is when the catering truck. This is when the jet bridge was connected. It allows airlines to better enforce service level agreements with business partners at airports, but to be better coordinated and to be talking to each other in real time. So artificial intelligence, I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg right now, and folks don't really understand how transformative it's going to be.
I thought one of the great points made, it was towards the end, was talking about the attitude and mindset to AI and getting buy-in from everybody, every stakeholder. So, and just look at the aircraft, for instance, and the design of an aircraft. And a lot of focus is on the pilot usage, the cabin crew usage, and clearly the customer usage.
Yeah.
But they represent about a third of the current people who use or have to engage with that piece of technology, that kit. So you've got the cargo handlers, you've got the baggage handlers, you've got the cleaners and the caterers and so on, and they're never asked, what could technology do to improve your life? That was seems to me a really good point made, because if you do ask that, they'll accept it when it comes in.
Yeah, and whichever the audience is, I think about how do we connect AI to the lifestyles of our frontline crew members. People get excited about artificial intelligence for all sorts of applications. Meanwhile, there's such a focus on culture and employee retention within the aviation space because turnover has been so high lately. So I like to put myself in the shoes of a flight attendant that just got in late on a flight to the airport hotel in Los Angeles, and all they want is to know where is takeout open at this hour. Where can I get some food? Well, AI can say, okay, well, I've been tracking your flight and I know that you got in late. Here are all the places within a half-mile radius of your hotel that would bring you delivery at this hour. We think about culture as how do we give incentives and pizza parties and things like that to connect with our employees, but why don't we think smartly about how do things fit into quality of life for people who are working here, not only on the job, but how that translates outside. I think there are so many exciting opportunities.
Yeah. The other big theme was about collaboration, and so Jetblue Ventures is helping these companies that will eventually actually benefit the entire industry. You're not keeping it to yourself necessarily. This is not just your IP. Okay, so that's important, and we heard from Boeing earlier as well with their Xelerated program, saying, well, if it's not for us, we'll call our competitors and say, maybe you can help these guys. That's important for you, is it, that there's this collaborative effort, especially around the big issue items like sustainability, maybe?
Absolutely. This can be such a risk-averse industry, and I understand. I want that to be de-risked when I'm looking at a prospective new business business partner and know, hey, they've worked with another airline before. So if we get the call from a startup that seems really exciting to us and really interesting, but our parent company, JetBlue, might not be in a place right now where they can absorb that technology, we call our friends. Sometimes there's a second mover advantage, and an initial deployment might not go exactly to plan. However, there are things that we can learn to ensure there's greater success when it does get in front of JetBlue.
Yeah. We heard from regulators as well, so and that can be a bit of a blocker for innovation. But again, I think what the CAA who spoke was keen to stress was it's not coming from us necessarily. If you talk to us, we're trying to enable.
Absolutely.
But you've got to talk to us. So again, that was the issue of collaborating and talking. Is the industry, in terms of the regulators, do you think there needs to be work there to ensure that they allow this to happen? Or do you think actually they're willing to let it happen? They just need to be feel as though they're part of it and know what's going on?
This is probably the one place where you don't ask for forgiveness, and you should be asking for permission. I think it's very common in the VC industry and in the startup world to move fast and break things. Well, you can't break things in this industry. You have to be quite careful. The FAA Tech Center has always been a fantastic partner, whether to us or to our startups that we interface with. It's good to have a seat at the table with them. I think there's so many opportunities for things that regulators themselves need, that technology can be a solution for. I think about Class B airspace, particularly when it comes to these eVTOLs that are entering the market in very crowded airspace. We need to be better than using visual flight rules in a lot of these areas and have technology that does allow us to coordinate better, whether it's aircraft to aircraft or to the regulators.
Yeah. Look, that's gone so quick. We could obviously talk about this for hours, but we don't have hours. We had 10 minutes or so. That's about up. But just to wrap up, anyone out there who's got a great idea and who wants JetBlue Ventures to help them with it, how do they get in touch with you? What's the process?
Absolutely. So jetblueventures.com, if you go to our website, there is a form to submit and to pitch to startups. But I think as a special gift to those who are listening today, I'm going to give out my email address. I'm Stephen with a PH, STEPHEN at jetblueventures.com. I would love to hear from you. Let us know what you're working on, whether it's me, whether it's one of my teammates. We're so passionate about partnering with entrepreneurs. Help us find you.
Yeah. That's a great offer. I'm not sure it's exclusive to ABN Cast, but it's a great offer anyway. Stephen, thanks for that. Time's beaten us, but I'm sure we'll speak again about this sort of stuff. It's really fascinating, and thank you very much for joining us on ABN Cast.
Thank you, Lee.
So that's a wrap for ABN Cast at Aerospace Tech Week 2024. We hope you've enjoyed our 2 special editions of the podcast. And look out for future editions, and don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel or on Spotify so you don't miss out. Thank you very much. We're delighted that our friends at Amadeus have agreed to be the launch sponsor for ABN Cast. And while they do not endorse the opinions and views expressed, they are keen to support a new forum for open discussion and debate around the future of aviation. Amadeus's technology powers the global travel and tourism industry, inspiring more open ways of working, more connected ways of thinking, always with an eye on how the industry can evolve, on how the travel industry can better serve travellers, bring people together, explore new experiences, and do business. Travel should be meaningful and personal, and it must be centred around the traveller, which is why Amadeus is investing to create their technology to put more power into people's hands. As an industry, we only progress by working together, and Amadeus's open platform is connecting the entire global travel and hospitality ecosystem. Our environment, our communities, and our destinations matter. Together with our customers and industry partners, Amadeus is working to make travel a force for social and environmental good, and ABN Cast will be placing a specific focus on these themes in future editions. To find out more, visit www.amadeus.com and make sure you subscribe to ABN Cast, which you can do on Aviation Business News' YouTube channel or on Spotify, so you don't miss out on any future editions. And please tell your friends and colleagues all about us. Thanks very much.